I thank you very much, both ministers, Minister Lamamra and Minister Mas, for your statements. Now, I understand that both ministers need to leave for other pressing engagements very soon, but I would like to thank you so very much for making yourselves available for this conference. Now, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now propose that the conference consider the procedural and organizational matters under item 2 of its provisional agenda. I understand that agreements were reached at open-ended informal consultations of signatory states in Vienna on sub-items of agenda item 2. The agreements reached are described in information paper 4, that is Ctbt Art 14/2021/Inf4, which was circulated in advance to all state signatories and is available on the conference website. I would like to invite the conference to confirm these agreements and to adopt the decisions suggested in information paper number 4. If I see no objection, may I take it that the conference wishes A, to elect by acclamation Italy and South Africa to the office of the presidency of the conference. B, to adopt the draft rules of procedure as contained in documents Ctbt Art 14/2021/1 and Addendum 1. C, to adopt the agenda of the conference as contained in document Ctbt Art 14/2021/2. D, to elect Kenya, Spain, and the Netherlands as vice presidents of the conference in accordance with Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure of the conference. E, to establish the Credentials Committee composed of representatives of Canada, as well as Ireland, Kenya, Namibia, and the Netherlands, whose nominations were received after the issuance of information paper number 4. F, to confirm Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission of the CTBTO, as Secretary of the Conference, and G, to decide, in accordance with Rules 41, 42, and 43 of the Rules of Procedure, on the attendance of its meetings by the specialized agencies, related organizations, intergovernmental organizations, and entities with observer status, which have applied to the Secretariat, and those non-governmental organizations that have requested accreditation. Here, I would like to note that no applications for participation in the conference have been received from any non-governmental organizations. I see no objection. It is so decided. I would like to extend my congratulations to the distinguished representatives that have been elected or appointed to offices of the conference. I now have the honor to invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, His Excellency Mr. Luigi Di Maio, and the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Korea, Her Excellency Ms. Naledi Pandor, to assume the duties of the presidency of the conference. I understand that acting on behalf of Minister Di Maio will be the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Her Excellency Ms. Marina Sereni.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as co-presidents, my colleague Minister Pandor and I would like to welcome you all to the 12th Conference on Facilitating the Entry into Force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. I would also like to inform you that as co-presidents, we will be exchanging roles as we preside over this important conference. The presidency will count on the support of all delegations in ensuring the success of this important conference. We believe that the conference will significantly contribute to the ongoing global efforts to facilitate the entry into force of the treaty. The Presidency trusts that in implementing the mandate of the Article 14 Conference, all delegations will seize this valuable opportunity to facilitate the early entry into force of this treaty. Before inviting the UN's Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, to deliver the address of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, I would like to thank the Secretary General for convening this conference pursuant to the Article 14 of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The personal efforts of Secretary General Guterres and the work of the UN Secretariat in support of the Article 14 process are greatly appreciated. I am also pleased to welcome the newly appointed Executive Secretary of the Ctbo Preparatory Commission, Dr. Robert Floyd. We are confident that under the experienced guidance of Dr. Floyd, the Ctbo Preparatory Commission will continue to make steady progress on implementing its mandate, thus building upon the success accomplished by the stewardship of its predecessors. The Presidency is grateful to the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the Ctbo in Vienna and the United Nations Secretariat in New York for the efficient joint actions in preparing this conference, especially in view of the challenging situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, due to which we have had to resort to holding this conference in a virtual format. Let me inform that after this opening part of the conference, acting on behalf of the co-presidents will be the ambassadors of Italy and South Africa in Vienna. I would like now to turn to the items on our agenda. In accordance with Agenda Item 3 of the conference, I wish to invite Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, to deliver the Secretary General's address to the conference. Ms. Nakamitsu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ministers, excellencies, and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to greet the participants in this conference. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. Robert Floyd as he embarks on his new endeavor as the Executive Secretary of the Cdbt Preparatory Commission at this very challenging time. The difficulties we already face in nuclear disarmament have been compounded by COVID-19. Its impact is felt vividly at this moment as you meet virtually for the first time in this conference's history. A prohibition on nuclear testing is an essential element of a nuclear weapon-free world. A quarter of a century after its negotiation, the Ctbt has created an almost universally adopted norm against the testing of nuclear weapons. As the treaty celebrates its 25th anniversary, we should recall that it has become one of the most widely supported international instruments, with 185 signatories and 170 ratifying states. I warmly welcome the new states that have joined since the last conference, Comoros and Cuba. Your ratifications help strengthen the treaty's universality. This in turn helps strengthen the treaty's impact. The Preparatory Commission is to be applauded for its tireless work in establishing a proven, robust, and global verification system, one that is able to conduct real-time monitoring of nuclear test activities anywhere on Earth. Given its necessity and readiness, it is both disappointing and frustrating that the treaty has not yet entered into force. We all know the reason for this. The 8 remaining Annex II states whose ratifications are required for the treaty's entry into force. As a result, a critical element of our collective security cannot be fully operationalized. I repeat my call to these states to sign and ratify a Ctbt as soon as possible. I also call on all other states that have not yet signed or ratified the treaty to do so without delay. It is my earnest hope that in the not too distant future, we will no longer need to convene this conference. We have remained in this state of limbo for too long. No norm or moratorium can replace a legally binding prohibition. States must take this occasion to redouble their efforts, to think creatively, and act in the interest of the entire world's security. I assure you that the United Nations stands ready to assist in whatever way we can to bring this treaty into force without any further delay. I wish you a very successful conference, and I thank you very much.
On behalf of all delegations, I wish to thank Secretary General Guterres for his important address to the conference and to reiterate our sincere appreciation for the support and cooperation that we have received from him personally and from the staff of the UN Secretariat in preparing for the conference.
Before proceeding to the next agenda item, I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the General Assembly, who will address us.
Excellencies, colleagues, it is my honor to be here and address all of you. I thank the co-presidents and the Preparatory Commission for organizing this important conference. For over 70 years now, the world has lived under the shadow of a mushroom cloud. We have witnessed the horrors unleashed when these weapons were used almost immediately after they were developed, when the technology behind them was still young. And yet, arsenals continue to grow, and our scientific prowess in war continues to outpace our moral wisdom. These horrific weapons now have the potential to wipe out human civilization many times over. Contrary to this, most of humanity yearns for a world that is free of nuclear weapons. The numbers speak for themselves. 185 member states have now signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and 170 have ratified it. This year, as we mark the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Ctbt by the General Assembly, we must galvanize efforts to make this treaty legally binding. This treaty remains one of the most important international instruments in global nuclear disarmament efforts. I applaud all those countries that have signed and ratified the treaty, and urge those who have not done so to do so without delay, particularly the remaining Annex II states whose ratification is needed for entry into force. Excellencies, under my presidency of hope, I am committed to working together with all relevant stakeholders to advance the disarmament agenda. Towards this end, I heartily applaud the outreach activities being done by the Provisional Technical Secretariat to encourage signature and ratification of the treaty. I also encourage all involved to continue to engage with all stakeholders, particularly the youth. After all, it is the young that will suffer most if we fail to act. Excellencies, in closing, it is my sincere hope that the discussions to follow during this conference will be productive, that we will hear fresh perspectives on how to press the urgency of the issue. It is my firm belief that together we can realize our hope of a world that is free of nuclear weapons. And I thank you.
I thank the President of the UN General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid, for his important remarks and his expression of strong support for the treaty and its entry into force.
Turning now to agenda item 4, I would like to give the microphone to my colleague in the Presidency, Minister Pandor, who would address first the conference on behalf of the Presidency. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, South Africa welcomes the convening of the Article 14 conference to encourage ratification and universalization of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This conference is an opportunity for the international community to highlight the dangers and threats posed to international peace and security by nuclear weapons and tests. It also allows us an opportunity to pay tribute to those who have been victims of the use of nuclear weapons. We believe that the conference should be part of sustained and redoubled efforts to encourage the signing and ratification of the treaty. The importance South Africa attaches to the treaty and its objectives has been demonstrated by the fact that we were one of the first countries to sign and ratify the treaty, and we strongly support the entry into force of the treaty. We are therefore honored to be presiding over this conference along with Italy. We commend Algeria and Germany for their sterling efforts as co-presidents of the previous conference. Excellencies, we are also pleased to preside over the conference as we commemorate the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the treaty in 1996. Against this backdrop, we should bear in mind and highlight the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of a nuclear weapon detonation, whether by accident or design, and in any environment. As we commemorate this day, it is appropriate to reflect on the current challenges and opportunities facing the realization and strengthening of the global norm against nuclear tests and nuclear disarmament in general. This challenge is heightened by the escalating vertical advancement and stockpiling, and the horizontal spread of the development of nuclear arsenals and their means of delivery, perpetuated by those that possess them. South Africa therefore urges the nuclear weapon states and those that possess these horrific weapons to make urgent progress toward the achievement of the total elimination of nuclear weapons. South Africa believes that today's commemoration should continue to remind us of the urgency of the entry into force and universalization of the treaty as a cornerstone of our collective endeavors to prevent both the vertical and horizontal proliferation of nuclear weapons, and as a solid foundation for the achievement of a world free of nuclear weapons. It is in this context that my country shares the concern expressed about the lack of progress in the ratification of the treaty, in particular by the 8 remaining Annex II states. On a positive note, we welcome the ratifications of the treaty by Zimbabwe, Comoros, and Cuba since the last conference in 2019. The failure to bring the Ctbt into force will only weaken and undermine the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament machinery and become an increasingly challenging obstacle to the international community's quest for a world free from the threat of nuclear weapon devastation. We have repeatedly expressed our view that until entry into force of the Ctbt, it is essential that countries continue to observe a moratorium on any nuclear explosions. However, such a moratorium should not seek to become a viable long-term replacement for the legally binding commitment of state signatories to the treaty upon entry into force. South Africa, therefore, resolves to continue its active role in the work of the CTBTO, both from a technical and political perspective. This includes support for the concrete, actionable steps toward early entry into force and universalization of the treaty, such as using avenues to encourage further signature and ratification, as well as outreach initiatives. Furthermore, as part of our contribution, South Africa has nominated our very own Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Alvin Botas, to serve as part of the group of eminent persons supporting and complementing efforts to promote the treaty's entry into force, as well as reinvigorating international endeavors to achieve this goal. We also finally look forward to working with the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, Dr. Robert Floyd, with whom we are glad to share this platform today and to support his work in the future. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Pandor, for your inspiring statement.
Distinguished delegates, let me now give the floor to my colleague, Vice Minister Sereni, who will also address the conference on behalf of the Presidency.
Thank you. Madam High Representative, Executive Secretary, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to join my South African colleague, Her Excellency Naledi Pandor, as co-president of this conference on facilitating the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, as Italy and South Africa jointly take on the role as Article 14 coordinators for the upcoming 2-year period. I thank the state signatories for their support, as well as my colleagues from Germany and from Algeria for the excellent work carried out as previous co-presidents. I would like to thank the UN Secretary General for convening this conference and for his tireless dedication to the cause of putting an end to the nuclear tests. I also wish to congratulate Dr. Robert Floyd on his appointment as Executive Secretary of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission and assure Italy's full cooperation and support during his mandate. The beginning of our co-presidency falls on the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Ctbt, a major building block of the disarmament and non-proliferation agenda. This conference provides an important opportunity to restate our commitment towards the ultimate goal of a peaceful and secure world free of nuclear weapons. In this regard, we welcome the progress made towards the universalization of the treaty since the last conference in 2019. The Cdbt has been signed so far by 185 states and ratified by 170, which makes it one of the most widely supported multilateral treaties. Regrettably, 25 years after its opening for signatures, the Ctbt has not yet entered into force. However, it has already achieved two fundamental goals. First, the treaty has paved the way for a de facto moratorium on nuclear tests. We call on all states to respect it. Second, through the Preparatory Commission of the Ctbto, it has established an effective global verification regime. In these latest years, it has demonstrated its invaluable role in providing reliable and independent data. To achieve further progress, the current voluntary moratoria on nuclear test explosions should be translated into a binding norm through the entering into force of the Ctbt. Italy, as a staunch supporter of the treaty, reiterates the appeal to all states that have not yet done so, and in particular to the remaining 8 states of Annex II, to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. At the same time, we call on the international community to keep supporting the completion of the Ctbt's monitoring system even before the entry into force of the treaty, in order to improve its ability to provide accurate data analysis. We remain fully committed to the strengthening of the international monitoring system, including through our national seismic station and radionuclide laboratory. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, the current threats to global peace and security make it more pressing than ever to renew all efforts towards the universalization and entry into force of the Ctbt. Our shared commitment is crucial to reach this fundamental goal. Each country has a role to play. Italy, as co-president of this conference, will continue to seize every opportunity to advocate for the prompt entry in force of the treaty. We therefore invite all partners to work together closely to build political momentum, turn it into action, and eventually into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister Sereni, for your equally inspiring statement on behalf of the presidency of the conference. We will now move on to the next agenda item.
In accordance with item 5, address by the Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, I have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Dr. Robert Floyd, the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission, to address the conference. Please, Dr. Floyd, you have the floor.
Co-Presidents, Ms. Panda and Ms. Sereni, High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Nakamitsu, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate the co-presidents on their election and their willingness to take on the leadership of this conference for the next 2 years. I also wish to thank our past co-presidents for their leadership and for the kind words of congratulations of all co-presidents and the Secretary General. I thank each of you. Tomorrow will mark the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. On the 24th of September 1996, with a sense of hope and optimism, countries gathered here in New York to sign this landmark agreement and committed to putting an end to nuclear explosions by anyone, anywhere, and for all time. A non-proliferation and disarmament objective decades in the making, the Ctbt is truly an historic achievement. The Ctbt now has 185 state signatories and 170 ratifying states, and there is near universal adherence to the treaty's prohibition on nuclear testing. We continue to make steady progress towards universalization, as evinced by the recent ratifications by Comoros and Cuba. Through the Article 14 process and other mechanisms, we are stepping up our collective effort to promote Ctbt signatures and ratifications in this, its 25th anniversary year. With these efforts, we can expect to welcome ratifications by many more states in the near future. We can also look forward to some of the few remaining non-signatory states joining the vast majority of the world by signing the treaty. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Ctbt is a testament to the importance of multilateralism in advancing international peace and security. It also demonstrates that non-proliferation and disarmament are cooperative undertakings with responsibilities shared by all. The treaty's science-based verification regime has proven capable of effectively monitoring all corners of the globe for any evidence of a nuclear explosion, building trust for all. And beyond the core mission of nuclear test monitoring, the verification regime provides a virtual treasure trove of data that can be utilized for a variety of applications, such as climate change research and disaster warning and mitigation. While these accomplishments highlight the overall success of the Ctbt, the only way to secure an enduring and verifiable prohibition on nuclear testing is through its entry into force and universalization. In this 25th anniversary year, I urge you to take action through bilateral, regional, or multilateral initiatives to move towards universalization of the treaty and complete its verification regime. It is high time that the international community is able to access the full scope of benefits that can be provided by the treaty by bringing the treaty into force. Let us commit today to do all we can to achieve this shared objective and be ever closer to fulfilling the promise of a nuclear weapons-free world for now and generations to come. Thank you.
I wish to thank Dr. Floyd for his important address. On behalf of all participants, I would like to express to him our sincere appreciation for the hard work done by the Ctbo Preparatory Commission and by him personally. I also wish to thank, through Dr. Floyd, the staff of the Ctbo for their tireless efforts in preparing for the effective implementation of the treaty and assisting the activities of signatory states in facilitating the entry into force of the treaty.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the Presidency would like to move to item 6 on our agenda, the adoption of a final declaration of the conference. I wish to draw the attention of delegations to Working Paper 1 of the conference, dated 22nd September 2021. This document contains the draft final declaration with a number of suggested measures to promote and work for the entry into force of the treaty. The document has been circulated to all delegations in advance of this conference. Bearing in mind the positive results of the open-ended informal consultations in Vienna on the text contained in Working Paper 1 of this conference, I understand that there is consensus among delegations to adopt this text of the draft final declaration and its measures. Would any delegation like to take the floor under this agenda item? I've looked all over and I see none. May I take it that the conference now wishes to adopt its final declaration? I also see no objections. It is so decided. In keeping with the I believe it's you.
Yeah, mine. In keeping with the established practice, the final declaration will be annexed to the report of the conference, whose draft will be considered under agenda item 12, which will be issued shortly on the ECS and the Ctbo webpage. The Presidency also intends to request the Secretary General of the United Nations as depository of the treaty to forward the final declaration to all member states of the United Nations as soon as possible. This concludes our work under agenda item 6. I will now, as indicated earlier, in view of the virtual format of this conference, ask the ambassadors of Italy and South Africa in Vienna to continue with our proceedings on behalf of Minister Pandor and myself. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, while thanking our respective ministers, Ambassador Molekane and myself, take now the baton from Vienna. Let us now take up agenda for item 7, entitled Presentation of a Progress Report on Cooperation to Facilitate the Entry into Force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This progress report was referred in the statements made by the distinguished foreign ministers of Algeria and Germany under agenda item 1. I understand that a written report is also available to delegation online. It is contained in document Ctbt at 14/2021/INF.1. No doubt, this creates a good starting point for the new coordinators of Article 14 process, Italy and South Africa, to continue and possibly accelerate this process. Let me now give the floor to the representative of the CTBTO group of eminent persons.
We are honored to address this 12th Article 14 conference on behalf of the group of eminent persons, GEM. Since its establishment in 2013, the group has remained committed to advancing the noble objective of a world free from nuclear testing. Complementing the work of the CTBTO Prep to come member states, including the Article 14 co-coordinators, the group has assiduously promoted the importance of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in the global non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, with a view to achieving its long-awaited entry into force. In this context, we call upon the 8 remaining states mentioned in the Annex 2 of the treaty to join the overwhelming majority of the states and sign and ratify the treaty without further delay, and to be the first mover as promptly as possible instead of waiting for others to do it. It is only through the full implementation of the treaty that the world will enjoy the promised benefits for international peace, security, and development. The group appreciates the bold determination and steady vision of the CTBTO Secretariat and its Executive Secretary in ensuring that the treaty remains a focus of international discourse and deliberation. Much progress has been achieved over the years, both in reinforcing the treaty and the non-test norm, and building up and maintaining the treaty's verification in a sustainable and cost-effective manner. On multiple occasions, the treaty's verification regime has proven to be capable of fulfilling its mission. 2 integrated field exercises have demonstrated that the on-site inspection capabilities of the organization have advanced to a high degree of sophistication and readiness. The system has proven to be resilient even to these challenging situations like COVID pandemic, with high records of data availability from IMS stations all over the world.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is recognized that there's a large untapped potential of the verification regime to contribute to real scientific research and discovery. In particular, there's a growing acknowledgement of what the organization's monitoring technologies and expertise could contribute to the process of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The treaty's verification regime and monitoring data can also contribute substantively to the achievement of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. While affirming the core mandate of the organization and its verification regime is to prohibit nuclear test explosions in a transparent and verifiable manner, spin-off benefits of the monitoring technologies and data should continue to be explored and utilized by the international community. Since the last Article 14 conference in September 2019, we have welcomed ratifications by Cuba and Comoros. With these advancement in universality, the treaty now has 185 signatures and 170 ratifications. Today, global peace and security is being advanced by a de facto prohibition on nuclear test explosions, backed up by a verification regime that has been proven to be capable of meeting the verification requirements of the treaty. While these accomplishments represent the fruits of the labor of the international community, we wish to recognize and pay tribute to the particular efforts of the Executive Secretary and the Provisional Technical Secretariat in advancing the shared aspirations of a nuclear test-free world. The aforementioned advancements notwithstanding, we are troubled at what we view as a significant weakening of the global norms and institutions that have contributed to global peace and security. These include some key mechanisms that we believe have helped reduce nuclear threats and prevent the use of nuclear weapons.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this trend has been accompanied by a breakdown in trust among states and a reemergence of a narrow defined concept of national security that threaten to further diminish the international community's ability to address the significant transboundary challenges of the 21st century. There are a lot of important issues in the international agenda, considering the immense challenges ahead of humanity for international security, nuclear disarmament, and non-proliferation, COVID pandemic situation and its consequences, worldwide public health issues, climate change, economic recession, sustainable development, and human welfare. We all know the challenges of sustainable development and its connection to peace. Nuclear explosions would have strong impact on climate change, environment, and cause catastrophic humanitarian consequences. Linking to that, it is very important to develop international security mechanisms that make progress in achieving a safer and more secure world by banning all nuclear test explosion through early entry into force of Ctbt. What is urgently needed is a reordering of priorities and a rethinking of approaches that will allow the rebuilding of trust and confidence in science-based diplomacy and multilateral solutions to threat to global security. These principles must be embraced if we are to safeguard and build upon the international nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament regime, which is the only way to advance the overreaching objective of a world free of nuclear weapons. The treaty embodies the principle of science-based diplomacy and multilateralism in both spirit and letter. Advancing its entry into force remains the most effective and practical non-proliferation and disarmament measures within grasp of the international community. This is particularly true within the context of the 2020 NPT Review Conference.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we commit ourselves to seizing every opportunity to emphasize the importance of the treaty and its entry into force and its universalization in line with the Global Eminent Persons Group Action Plan agreed upon for 2019-2020. We will continue to work with member states, civil society, academia, and the media to spread the message that the entry into force of the treaty is a necessary and most achievable step forwards to achieve a world free from nuclear weapons. We will continue to advocate for the Cdbt at the highest political levels, leveraging our experience and our expertise to highlight the contributions of the treaty to international peace, security, and development. We will work with the next generation, and in particular the CDBTO youth group, to ensure that they are equipped with the knowledge and tools to be empowered to identify innovative solutions that will advance the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament agendas. And most importantly, we will continue to urge states to support the treaty and its verification regime by signing and ratifying the treaty, providing funding for the organization and its activities, participating fully in the establishment of the treaty's verification regime, and helping to keep the treaty on the international agenda. Securing a peaceful and prosperous future depends on a stable and credible nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament framework. Ensuring a nuclear test-free world is paramount to this objective and to the broader vision of a world free from nuclear weapons. The entry into force of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is an attainable victory for the international community that is hiding in plain sight let us work together to finally put an end to nuclear testing by anyone, anywhere, and for all time. I thank you.
I warmly thank the members of the CTBTO group of management persons for their valuable work and their efforts in promoting the entry into force of the CTBT. That concludes our consideration under agenda item 7. Let us now take up item 8, which reads General Exchange of Views by ratifiers and signatories on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT. At this stage, 59 delegations have been inscribed on the list of speakers for the purpose of participating in the General Exchange of Views, most of them represented at ministerial level. I would like to encourage those delegations wishing to speak under this item, which are yet to inscribe their names of the countries on the list of speakers, to advise Secretariat through the chat function. In order to organize the efficient work of the conference for the second meeting this afternoon, the Presidency intends to close the list of speakers by 7:30 p.m. Vienna time. The updated speaker list will be made available on Interprofile link used for this meeting, as well as on the conference webpage at 7:45 p.m. Austria Vienna time, which is 1:45 p.m. in New York. The Presidency may also need to exercise some flexibility in adjusting the list of speakers as necessary to ensure the smooth flow of the meeting. The Presidency would also like to draw the attention of delegations to the agenda of the conference in document number 2, Ctbt Art 14/2021/2, where the conference has agreed that speakers limit their statements to not more than 3 minutes each in order to allow as many inscribed speakers as possible to address the conference. All written statements sent to the Secretariat of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission will be available on the website of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission upon delivery. Before I turn to the list of speakers, the Presidency would like to note with appreciation the most recent signing and ratification of treaty by Cuba, the ratification of the treaty by Comoros. This is yet another important development resulting from the Article 14 process, which is also a success for the countries from the region of Africa and Latin America. The number of states that have signed the treaty is, as reminded also by previous the minister speaking beforehand, are 185, and those that have ratified it has become 170. I would now like to turn the list of speakers under this agenda item, and first to those representing regional groups. Therefore, I have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Josep Borrell, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, to make a statement on behalf of the European Union. Excellency, you have the floor.
Distinguished co-presidents, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to speak on behalf of the European Union, the candidate countries, Turkey, the Republic of North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Albania, the country of the stabilization and association process, and potential candidate Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, and Georgia, align themselves with this statement. The European Union congratulates Italy and South Africa on assuming the presidency of the Article 14 conference and assure you of our full support and cooperation. Let me also express our great appreciation for the work carried by Germany and Algeria as previous coordinators. I also congratulate Dr. Robert Floyd on his appointment as the Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization and wish him every success in promoting the entry into force and universal adherence to this important treaty. Today, we gather to mark the 25th anniversary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the Cdbt. It's a key pillar of our collective security and an indispensable multilateral instrument to prevent the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear weapon test explosion or any other nuclear explosions represent a serious threat to international peace and security and undermine the global non-proliferation regime. At times when geopolitical competition is on the rise and multilateralism is under increasing pressure, we must redouble our efforts to uphold and strengthen the international non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, promote the important treaty, and advance towards its entry into force. The 25th anniversary is a good moment to take stock of what has been achieved and to look ahead at what we can expect in the future. While the ultimate goal of bringing the treaty into force has not been achieved yet, the Ctbt has nevertheless established itself as a strong, fully verifiable instrument signed by the 185 states and ratified by 170. Its international monitoring system has already demonstrated value in providing independent and reliable data that will help deter non-compliance. And following the North Korea's nuclear test, reliable and independent data was quickly available for decision makers, so enabling the international community to respond appropriately and swiftly. Promoting the entry into force and universalization of the Cdbt remains a top priority of the European Union. All 27 member states have ratified the treaty and will remain strongly committed to it. The European Union calls on all states, in particular the remaining 8 Annex II states, to sign and ratify the treaty without any preconditions or delay. And we welcome the latest ratification by Cuba and the Union of the Comoros. Pending the entry into force of the treaty, we call on all states to refrain from conducting any action contrary to its object and purpose. The European Union has been and will continue to be a strong supporter of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Since 2006, the European Union has provided voluntary contributions for more than 29.5 billion euros for the strengthening of its monitoring and verification capabilities. On our part, the European Union will continue to use every opportunity to advocate the treaty's prompt entry into force and universalization in international fora, including at the upcoming review conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and with third countries that have not yet signed or ratified the treaty. Bringing the Ctbt into force is not the responsibility of a group of states alone. It's a collective endeavor of the international community. To put an end to nuclear testing, let's also build the necessary trust and confidence and work together to finish what we have already started. I have to thank you for your attention.
I wish to thank the UI representatives and Vice President of the European Commission for his statement on behalf of the European Union and for the kind words he has addressed to the Presidency. We appreciate the important role played by the European Union in participating actively in the global efforts to facilitate the entry into force of the treaty and in supporting the work of the Ctbo Preparatory Commission in Vienna. This exhausts the list of speakers addressing the conference on behalf of regional groups. So I will now turn to the speakers representing individual countries, which are listed, I remind that, in accordance with the established protocol rules of the United Nations. Now it disappeared. Therefore, the first speaker on my list, I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belgium, His Excellency Sophie Wilmès, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Affairs and Foreign Trade, and the Federal Cultural Institution. Excellency, you have the floor.
Minister, Excellencies, let me first pay tribute to my colleagues from Germany and Algeria for the excellent work accomplished and express my support for Italy and South Africa as they take over. I would also like to congratulate Dr. Robert Floyd on his appointment as the CTBTO's Executive Secretary and assure him of our full support in carrying out his duties. Ladies and gentlemen, the CTBT was signed 25 years ago, but its objective remains more important than ever. The treaty is one of the building blocks of the non-proliferation regime. The norm it establishes against nuclear testing remains of crucial importance. We can be proud of the cooperation between all states. It has enabled the establishment of an international monitoring system, which is one of the most effective methods of verification of the global non-proliferation regime. However, the status quo is unacceptable. Only one country has continued to carry out nuclear tests in the 21st century. The entry into force of the treaty depends on the action of 8 countries. This responsibility falls on the final 8 Annex II states, but it's also the responsibility of all states parties to convince them to ratify the treaty. We are all facing an international system that has become less predictable and where the achievements of the non-proliferation regime are under pressure. In a system where unpredictability increases, collective responsibility also increases. The recent accession of new members to the treaty is encouraging. It demonstrates a positive dynamic, as well as the growing isolation of states still outside the system. Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one instrument that can guarantee a complete ban on nuclear tests. There is only one instrument that can prevent hidden tests. Therefore, there is no alternative to the CTBT. Moreover, there is no shortcut to a nuclear-free world without the entry into force of the CTBT. The objectives of the Non-Proliferation Treaty will be achieved through a full and complete entry into force of the CTBT. Belgium will continue to assume its responsibilities by supporting and promoting the CTBT as well as other tools of non-proliferation in order to progress towards a world without nuclear weapons. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Affairs and Foreign Trade and Federal Cultural Institutions of Belgium for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia, His Excellency Honorable Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. As I recognize the presidents of this session, namely South Africa and Italy, let me join others in congratulating you on your elections as presidents of the 12th session of the Article 14 Conference and ensure you of Namibia's full support. I express our great appreciation for the work carried out by your predecessors, Algeria and Germany. Furthermore, Namibia supports the declaration we just adopted. Our appreciation goes to the UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres, for convening this conference, and the Preparatory Committee for the organization given the unprecedented challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Namibia further wishes to take this opportunity to thank the outgoing Executive Secretary, Dr. Lazina Zebo, for his untiring commitment, dedication, and professionalism in executing the mandate of the Commission to universality the treaty and ensure operational readiness of the treaty verification regime. In the same vein, my delegation extends its warm welcomes to Dr. Robert Fred, the new Executive Secretary, and assures him of Namibia's full support and cooperation. Namibia reaffirms that the key objective of this conference is to promote the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in accordance with Article 14 of the treaty. We are honored deeply. We are, however, deeply concerned that 25 years after the treaty opened for signature, the prospect of its entry into force remain uncertain. As we observe the 25th anniversary of the Ctbt, we reiterate that the treaty remains a major instrument in the field of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. Thus, the non-entry into force undermines the international community's quest to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons. The onus is upon us state signatories and the Commission to popularize and promote the treaty through practical commitment to achieve its universalization and subsequently entry into force. Presidents, it will be amiss of us not to recognize the milestones achieved and progress made towards the universalization of the treaty since its opening for signature. We are pleased to note that the number of signatures and ratifiers stands at 185 and 170 respectively. In this context, we warmly welcome the ratification of the treaty by Cuba and the Union of Comoros since the last Article 14 conference in 2019. We further reiterate our strong call in the remaining Annex 2 states whose signatures and ratification are required for the treaty to enter into force to sign and ratify the treaty without any further delay. Presidents, pending the entry into force of the Ctbt, Namibia stands by the commitment outlined in the conclusion of the 2010 NPT Review Conference, which calls for the cessation of all nuclear tests, explosion, and ending the development of advanced new types of new nuclear weapons. It's our zeal to achieve a complete nuclear disarmament globally and a world without nuclear weapons. Thus, we call upon states to maintain all existing moratorium on nuclear weapons test explosion and to refrain from any form of action to nuclear weapon testing that will undermine the treaty's objective and purpose. In this context, we look forward to the upcoming NPT Review Conference to be held early 2022. It is our belief that the conference will take a balanced approach by focusing in all the three pillars, with particular emphasis on peaceful use that is important for us, considering that uranium is one of the natural resources which is God-given to Namibia. President, my delegation is moreover pleased to note that the International Monitoring System and the International Data Center of the Ctbt verification regime has demonstrated their effectiveness in bringing tangible scientific and civil benefit, including for tsunami warnings and other possible disaster alert systems. In conclusion, Presidents, Namibia will continue to work relentlessly with other states and to achieve the universalization and subsequent entry into force of the Ctbt. In this regard, we call on all state signatories to support the Article 14 Conference of the Ctbt and the goals of the treaty. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of Namibia for her statement, and I wish now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan, His Excellency Toshimitsu Motegi, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
His Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, distinguished delegates. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the CTBT. The CTBT has achieved nearly universality. It is signed by 185 states and ratified by 170 states as of today. I commend this achievement. The development of this verification system has also shown remarkable progress. Nearly 90% of the international monitoring system has now been established. However, we regret that the CTBT has not yet come into force, even after 25 years. Japan calls upon all states, especially the remaining 8 Annex II states, to make every effort to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. While the CTBT has not come into effect, prohibition of nuclear testing has been functioning as a de facto international norm. Since the dawn of the 21st century, no country has conducted nuclear testing, with one exception. Japan has been paying close attention to North Korea's nuclear development with grave interest. It is imperative to realize the complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of all WMD and ballistic missiles of all range by North Korea. This is a common goal under the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. We call upon North Korea to sign and ratify the CTBT. As the only country which has suffered from atomic bombings during war, Japan has made vigorous effort to advance nuclear disarmament. To this end, Japan is fully committed to achieving the entry into force of the CTBT, working together with both nuclear and non-nuclear weapon states. In closing, I would like to express my strong support to Dr. Floyd. I wish Italy and South Africa every success as new coordinators. I will lend my full support to them so that tangible progress will be made towards the entry into force of the CTBT. That progress will lead to the steady advancement of nuclear disarmament. I strongly believe that the determination we have shown today will contribute to the realization of this goal.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan for his statement and his support. And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Finland, His Excellency Pekka Haavisto, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Presidents, Excellencies, esteemed participants. In addition to the EU statement, I would like to add a few remarks in my national capacity as a long-standing member of the group Friends of the Ctbt. I would like to offer my warmest wishes to Dr. Robert Floyd for his appointment as the Executive Secretary of the Ctbto. I look forward to working with you in upholding the norm against nuclear testing and securing the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The Ctbt has been open for signatures for a quarter of a century, and it is now time for this process to be completed. Ratification by the Annex II states remains the key to the Ctbt's entry into force, and I call on the remaining 8 states to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. Universalization amongst non-annex states is equally important for strengthening the norm against nuclear testing. We welcome the latest ratifications by Cuba and the Union of Comoros. Pending entry into force of the Ctbt, maintaining moratoria on nuclear testing remains crucial. Our common goal is a world free of nuclear weapons. Concrete actions towards this end must be taken in the NPT review conference. The significance of the Ctbt must be recognized in deliberations of the review conference. The Ctbt has a uniquely strong verification regime. The international monitoring system provides independent and reliable information, ensuring compliance with the treaty. This is a great achievement of the Ctbto. The long-term sustainability of the network must be guaranteed. Finland, as the host, one of the IMS primary seismic stations, will continue its support to the network also in the future. Distinguished co-presidents, Finland is a strong advocate of the treaty. The Ctbt is a core element of the international nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime, and Finland will continue working towards its swift entry into force. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Finland for his statement, and I wish now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Denmark, His Excellency Jeppe Kofod, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Distinguished co-presidents, Denmark aligned itself with this EU statement. I take this opportunity to extend my congratulations to Ctbto Executive Secretary Floyd on his appointment and ensure him of my support in his mission. It was a pleasure to welcome him to Copenhagen earlier this month. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is a key element of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime, with the Non-Proliferation Treaty at its core. The treaty has established a strong norm against nuclear weapons testing. Yet, 25 years after its opening for signature, our treaty is still not in force. A legally binding instrument would outlaw nuclear weapons tests for good. For this reason, promoting entry into force remains a top priority. I call on all the remaining Annex II countries to take every step possible towards early ratification. This would be a valuable and necessary contribution to multilateralism and to nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. Even in the absence of entry into force, the international community has managed to build a strong and effective regime. A regime that has proven itself useful for verification, but also for civil and scientific uses. The Kingdom of Denmark is proud to host two of the important monitoring stations. Pending entry into force, we must ensure that the verification system functions effectively. And we must ensure that the monitoring system remains up to date. We support all efforts by the Secretariat and signatory states to that end. Distinguished co-presidents, at this 25th anniversary conference, I join the calls for finishing what we have started. Let's put a legally binding end to nuclear testing. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark for his statement. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sweden, Her Excellency Anne Linde, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Chairpersons, Mr. Secretary General, let me at the outset thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for convening this conference and congratulate Italy and South Africa for taking over as Article 14's coordinators. I would also like to thank the outgoing coordinators, Algeria and Germany, for their tireless efforts in promoting the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Sweden aligns itself with a statement made by Slovenia on behalf of the European Union. I will now add some brief points in my national capacity. Chairpersons, nuclear disarmament is a key priority for Sweden. We are deeply concerned about mounting challenges to both horizontal and vertical nuclear non-proliferation and the erosion of the global treaty structures in recent years. To help reverse this trend and to promote concrete steps towards nuclear disarmament ahead of the next review conference of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Sweden in 2019 launched the Stockholm Initiative for Nuclear Disarmament, together with 15 other constructively engaged non-nuclear weapon states. Enhancing efforts towards the entry into force of the Ctbt figure among the proposals of the initiative. The Ctbt is a crucial part of the international disarmament and non-proliferation regime. This year is also a milestone for the treaty, as it was opened for signature 25 years ago on 24th of September 1996. The Ctbt contributes to constraining the development of new nuclear weapons and fosters international peace and security. The urgency of its entry into force has been agreed upon within the NPT framework, as well as the United Nations Security Council and the UN General Assembly. Sweden urges all Annex II states to take concrete steps toward ratification, including those that have not yet signed the treaty. At the same time, all must continue to act in accordance with the object and purpose of the treaty. Chairpersons, the operational effectiveness of the international monitoring system is well proven. However, only the entry into force of the treaty will allow for the full use of the verification regime. Sweden is proud to have contributed tangibly to the verification of the treaty through development of the sauna system for noble gas detection. Sweden's political and technical engagement against nuclear testing will remain steadfast. Our goal remains a world free of nuclear weapons. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden for her intervention, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia, His Excellency Anže Logar, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Co-President, let me congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the conference and thank the outgoing coordinators, Germany and Algeria. Slovenia also warmly welcomes the new Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, Dr. Robert Floyd, and look forward to working closely with him and the CTBTO Secretariat. The 25th anniversary of the treaty is a moment of reflection and ambition. Over the past year, the Ctbt evolved into a solid instrument with a truly advanced verification regime, primarily designed to ensure compliance with the treaty. At the same time, we must highlight the benefits for data provided by this system for research, training, and variety of civil and scientific application. Slovenia remains a strong advocate for the realization of the full potential of this application, also in the context of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. While these accomplishments give us confidence, the job is still not finished. We need a treaty that is legally in force. It is essential that our efforts stay focused on its full implementation because the international security environment is changing rapidly and the global non-proliferation disarmament and arms control architecture is under pressure. Slovenia joins the call on all states, which have not yet done so, to commit to sign and ratify the treaty as soon as possible. This is especially important concerning those countries whose ratification is needed for the treaty to take effect. Pursuing peace and security can only be done through multilateralism, strong global norms, and effective institutions to address the challenges we are facing. Slovenia will continue to advocate for the Ctbt, including at the upcoming review conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Slovenia remains a reliable partner of the Ctbto in its efforts to encourage young people for directing their careers towards science and technology in service of global peace and security. We will also continue to support activities focused on enhancing the role of the women and work of the organization. To conclude, eliminating nuclear weapons testing is an important step toward nuclear disarmament. It is an attainable goal and will join efforts the international community will be able to reach it. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia, who is currently holding the chairmanship of the European Union, for his statement. And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Philippines, His Excellency Teodoro Locsin, Jr., Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. and Madam Co-Presidents, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Anniversaries are usually cause for celebration. Yet our meeting today, for the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, calls not for celebration, but caution and deep reflection on a matter without exaggeration of life and death for all mankind. Despite near universal support, the Ctbt still has not entered into force. True, we have accomplished much in the past 25 years. We established a global norm against explosive nuclear testing. States who do so are met with unequivocal universal condemnation. We steadily built up a verification regime. The international monitoring system is around 90% complete. The Philippines is proud to host 3 of these facilities. The International Data Center in Vienna is in place to process and analyze data from the IMS. Preparations are underway to operationalize on-site inspections upon the treaty's entry into force. And we have identified civil and scientific applications, including tsunami warnings, for the wealth of data generated by the IMS and IDC. Everyone's been dressed for a party that's been repeatedly called off. For all these are for naught if we do not take the next step of having in force a legally binding prohibition against explosive nuclear testing. The condemnation has been universal the prohibition has been spotty, always short of legal force. This is urgent. This is essential to the broader non-proliferation and disarmament agenda. The 170 ratifying states are understandably frustrated. We once again add our voice and amplify the call for the 8 remaining Annex II states to sign and ratify the Ctbt without delay. We join consensus on the final declaration adopted by this conference. The only true measure of our success is if we succeed to make this Article 14 conference our last. It is the Philippines' hope that we are not engaged like that figure of myth in rolling a giant stone up a hill and slipping because the 8 atop the hill have thrown banana skins on the ground just one step shy of seeing in our lifetime a comprehensive nuclear ban treaty in full effect on top of the hill that offers, finally, a place of rest and a long, unclouded vision of mankind's future. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ecuador, His Excellency Mauricio Montalvo, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility. Excellency, you have the floor.
Señores copresidentes, el Ecuador, por mandato constitucional y por ser parte del Tratado de Tlatelolco, que declaró a la región latinoamericana como zona libre de armas nucleares, y por poseer también una tradición principista de apego a la paz, al derecho humanitario y a los derechos humanos, pilares de su acción internacional, condena el desarrollo, posesión y uso de dichas armas de destrucción masiva.
Therefore, Ecuador is firmly committed to nuclear disarmament and the non-proliferation regime. In line with these principles, Ecuador supports, in a decisive and proactive way, the mandates and premises enshrined in the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. A manifestation of this commitment and an effective contribution to the monitoring and verification system created by the treaty was the operationalization in the Galapagos Islands in 2016 and 2017, respectively, of radionuclide station ORN-24 and infrasound station 1520. The process to install both stations was undertaken in a context of efficient cooperation between the Government of Ecuador and the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the treaty. This made it possible to complete their construction more quickly than initially planned, while fully respecting the environment of these islands, which have been declared by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Ecuador believes it is a priority for the interests of the planet and humanity that this treaty enter into force. Therefore, we welcome the ratifications which have taken place since the last Article 14 Ministerial Conference by Cuba and the Union of Comoros. On the other hand, we regret the fact that the 8 states on Annex II of the treaty have still not signed or ratified it, thereby impeding its full validity. In this regard, we reiterate our call for these countries to sign or ratify it as soon as possible. This would serve as a concrete demonstration of support for the common objective of a world free from nuclear weapons. My country is firmly committed to all activities geared towards complementing and strengthening the disarmament and non-proliferation regime. For this reason, we actively participated in many multilateral fora, such as the Conference to Negotiate a Legally Binding Instrument to Prohibit Nuclear Weapons, which took place in 2017. In line with this policy, we deposited the instrument of ratification of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in September 2019. This instrument entered into force on the 22nd of January of this year. That date, that historic date, represents a victory for humanity, since it constituted a vital step in the quest for a safer and more humane world. The adoption of this instrument marks the beginning of a phase of intense work to ensure its objectives are fully achieved, namely through the accession or ratification of those states who have not yet done so. This path, which aims to achieve the complete elimination of these weapons, strengthens and does not weaken or challenge the existing regime created by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and by the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This is because we have a legally binding instrument which unequivocally prohibits the use and manufacturing of this type of devices of death and massive destruction. At the same time, it represents the beginning of the giving effect to the obligations established by Article 6 of the NPT. To conclude, I reaffirm the steadfast commitment of Ecuador to continue working with the vast majority of the international community on the path which is vital and unavoidable towards a world free, we hope, from the threatening spectre of all types of weapons of mass extermination. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility of Ecuador for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Kyrgyz Republic, His Excellency Ruslan Kazakbayev, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission, ladies and gentlemen, allow me, in my capacity as coordinator of the Central Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone, to congratulate Dr. Robert Floyd upon his election to the high post of Executive Secretary of the Ctbo, and to reassure him of our full support for his efforts. Upon the 25th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, we harbour the hope that the conference will add impetus to the entry into force of the treaty pursuant to Article 14. We call on the remaining states to swiftly accede to the treaty in furtherance of global peace and security. We welcome the signing of the treaty by Cuba and its ratification by the Union of the Comoros. This means that the number of treaties to have signed the treaty has reached 185, and the number of states to have ratified it has reached 170. This consequently brings us closer to the entry into force of the treaty, which will ensure efficient international control over disarmament. We are pleased that political support for the treaty has been accompanied by the steady establishment of its verification system. Kyrgyzstan is closely interacting with the Preparatory Commission in this area. Upon the 15th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty on a Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone in Central Asia on 8 September 2021, our states adopted a joint declaration which has been disseminated at the 76th session of the UN General Assembly. I should also like to note that on 29 August 2021, our zone celebrated the 30th anniversary of the closing of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. The Central Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone has some specific features, such as provisions on the environmental remediation of the damage caused to the region, including on account of uranium tailings and nuclear test sites. For the first time in history, the nuclear weapon states signed a protocol on negative security assurances to the Treaty on the Nuclear Weapon Free Zone in Central Asia. 4 of them have ratified it. We call on the US to swiftly ratify the protocol. Our zone was the first nuclear weapon-free zone in the Northern Hemisphere. In this regard, we would like to broaden cooperation with other such zones. We believe that the creation of regional nuclear weapon-free zones, including in the Middle East and on the Korean Peninsula, will be an effective instrument for bolstering the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. Kyrgyzstan advocates strengthening cooperation in disarmament and non-proliferation education. That is why Kyrgyzstan intends to submit a draft resolution on the establishment of an international day for raising awareness about disarmament and non-proliferation. We call on Member States to facilitate the success of this resolution, given the relevance of the topic it raises. We underscore that we endorse the final declaration of today's conference. We urge all to actively participate in implementing its measures and to facilitate the entry into force of the treaty. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kyrgyz Republic for his statement. I wish now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Spain, His Excellency José Manuel Álvarez Bueno, Minister for Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation. Excellency, you have the floor.
Señor Secretario General, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Mr. Executive Secretary, esteemed co-presidents, esteemed ministers and distinguished delegates. I would like to begin by recognizing the commitment of the Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as my colleagues from Italy and South Africa, as Article 14 coordinators, for organizing and convening this conference. I also extend gratitude to Germany and Algeria for their admirable work as the previous coordinators of the process to promote entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Spain aligns itself with the statement delivered by the High Representative of the European Union. However, we would like to make the following comments in our national capacity. The entry into force of the treaty would be a significant contribution to advancing to a world free of nuclear weapons, particularly in the run-up to the review conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Today, we, the participants of this conference, renew our highest political commitment to this entry into force and to putting an end to nuclear testing. This commitment, shared in the team of the Preparatory Commission, has allowed us to make significant progress. Firstly, the treaty is very close to being universal. It has helped to ensure that nuclear tests are rightly perceived as being reprehensible acts subject to international sanctions. The moratorium on nuclear testing has become a de facto international norm, respected by all since the beginning of this century, with the reprehensible exception of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We must remain united in our call for this moratorium to continue to be respected. However, it's vital that the treaty enter into force. Therefore, our primary call goes to those states who have not yet ratified the treaty, in particular those listed in Annex II, for them to work to fulfill this moral, political and strategic imperative. Moreover, our joint commitment has also facilitated the establishment of a complex and efficient architecture for detecting nuclear testing, namely the International Monitoring System. We must continue to provide the necessary resources to ensure its maintenance, since it contributes not only to the maintenance of international peace and security by guaranteeing early detection of nuclear explosions, but it also facilitates the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. It does this through its civil and scientific applications. The Preparatory Commission must be able to harness the potential of all the verification tasks granted to it through its mandate. Therefore, I extend to Dr. Floyd the full support of my country. In addition, I congratulate him on his recent election as Executive Secretary. Spain, as a member state of the European Union and an active participant in the Stockholm Initiative on Nuclear Disarmament, will continue to champion the entry into force of the treaty as well as its universalization. We support full respect of the international moratorium on testing. We support the Preparatory Commission and the Executive Secretary. Let us try together to finish the process we started a quarter of a century ago. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of Spain for his statement. And now it's my pleasure to invite the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, His Excellency Mr. Sergei Kyabkov, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is online from Moscow right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. President, first, I would like to greet Italy and South Africa as coordinators of future work. We wish you every success, and we'd like to express our gratitude to Algeria and Germany. which worked towards achieving our common goals. The COVID-19 pandemic, as before, continues to restrict our ability to communicate in person at the international level. We have been forced to hold this conference virtually. We hope that this situation will change very soon, and that the tried and tested practice of holding in-person meetings will resume. When it comes to the 25th anniversary of the treaty, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, made a statement. Allow me to read out the text. 25 years ago, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was opened for signature. The development of this historic document, aimed at fundamentally strengthening the nuclear weapon non-proliferation regime, underscored that even the most complex issues for global security can and should be addressed through negotiation and compromise. Russia ratified the treaty in the year 2000 and since then has been unstintingly complying with its provisions and has been actively involved in the work of the Ctbo Preparatory Commission. To date, the treaty has been signed by 185 countries and ratified by 170 of them. However, the treaty is sadly yet to enter into force. Its conversion into a fully fledged international legal instrument is being impeded by the stance of 8 countries, namely those whose ratification of the treaty is mandatory. Clearly, such a situation does nothing to contribute to nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. We trust that the governments of those countries, upon whom the fate of the Ctbo depends, will display political will and, over the upcoming years, will succeed in bringing about the conditions for the entry into force of this crucial multilateral agreement. This, without doubt, would serve the interests of the entire international community. Vladimir Putin. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ctbt was and remains a critical verification instrument for nuclear non-proliferation. Undoubtedly, once it is fully functional, which is possible only after the entry into force of the treaty, it will contribute greatly to advancing towards a world free of nuclear weapons. Russia welcomes the signing and ratification of the Ctbt by Cuba and the ratification by the Union of the Comoros. Each new ratification is exceptionally important for the Ctbt. It brings the treaty closer to being universal. That said, we see that in the period since the holding of the last conference in 2019, no significant progress in terms of the entry into force of the treaty has been seen. As before, the 8 Annex II states have been unable to take practical steps to sign and/or ratify the Ctbt. The lack of progress in this area creates major barriers for nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. It is difficult to develop new arrangements when the ones that already exist cannot function properly, even a quarter of a century after they were concluded. We believe that in such a critical field as the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, there should be no room for political bias. There should especially be no room for attempts to secure for oneself strategic advantages by refusing to participate in key international treaties. It is inadmissible that international security is being held hostage by the ambitions of just a few countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we trust that the 12th conference will fully deliver on the objectives set out in Article 14 of the Ctbt and will genuinely enable us to advance towards our common goal, namely the entry into force of the treaty. For our part, we will be involved in the practical implementation of the declaration adopted today and the list of measures it contains to facilitate the entry into force of the treaty. Thank you.
I thank Deputy Minister Ryabkov for his statement and for the address of the President of the Russian Federation. And getting close to 6 o'clock, I would close this session with giving the floor to the distinguished representative of the Czech Republic, His Excellency Jakub Kulhanek, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Excellency, you have the floor.
Distinguished co-presidents, Minister Di Maio, Minister Pandor, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first congratulate Italy and South Africa for assuming the presidency of the Article 14 conference and express appreciation to Germany and Algeria as previous coordinators. Warmest congratulations to Dr. Robert Floyd on his appointment as the new Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. And I wish him and his colleagues every success. Let me express my gratitude to Dr. Lassina Zarbo, who successfully led the CBTO in the past 8 years. His dedication and service have been highly appreciated. Marking the 25th anniversary of the treaty this year brings an opportunity to look back at what has been achieved. Over 2,000 nuclear tests were carried out between 1945 and 1996, when the CBT opened for signature. Only 3 countries have broken the de facto moratorium on testing nuclear weapons since 1996. The ban on nuclear testing is vital for international peace and security, and it prevents the huge damage caused by nuclear explosions to humans and environment. The treaty has established a unique and comprehensive verification regime to detect any nuclear explosion, anywhere on the Earth's surface, in the atmosphere, underwater, and underground. On the other hand, the ultimate goal of bringing the treaty into force has not been achieved yet. The legally binding Ctbt is essential for nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. It provides a clear and visible barrier between prohibited and permitted nuclear activities. Therefore, the Czech Republic calls on all states which have not yet done so to sign and ratify the treaty without any preconditions or delay. The Czech Republic was among the first countries to sign and ratify the Ctbt, promoting the entry into force and broadening the membership base of the Ctbt remains our top priority. We actively support the CTBTO since its establishment, and I'm proud that our ambassador to the UN in Vienna, His Excellency Ivo Šrámek serves this year as the chairperson of the Preparatory Commission of the Ctbto. The Ctbto is a unique organization relying heavily on scientists and experts. We salute their indispensable work and express the wish of all of us that their efforts continue to be guided only by the science and expertise. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic for his statement. I realize that now we just passed 6 o'clock, therefore I have to adjourn the conference. We will resume, as you know, at 7:30, so in an hour and a half, Vienna time, of course, and continue our deliberation under agenda item 8, which is general, basically we continue the general exchange of views. The meeting stands adjourned until 7:30 p.m. sharp. Thank you.